guys, welcome to the Treasury Update Podcast Coffee Break Session, the show where we cover foundational Treasury topics and questions in about the same amount of time it takes you to drink your coffee. This is your host, Alexa, and today I'm joined with Craig Jeffery, Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome back, Craig.
It's good to be back, Alexa.
Yeah, so today we're going to continue our, digital series or two-part series. And this time we're going to cover what is blockchain. So Craig, what is blockchain?
Yeah, I think a blockchain is it's a way of keeping track of records in let's just call it a ledger that adds information to the ledger. It uses cryptographic codes to record items, and they refer to them as blocks. And they're linked together and tracked using cryptographic methods. So it's a method of supporting distributed ledger technology and as opposed to a central ledger.
Okay, so then what are some uses of blockchain?
Sure. So when we think about how do people use blockchain and what do people hope to do with blockchain, some of it's the exchange of financial value. And you may think of some different examples where people are exchanging value for you're buying goods or services and using blockchain for cryptocurrency, for example. You can also use it for business document management. Could be documentary collections or trade information that people have to look at and act, and it's like a document has to move around, and people have to approve things, and this is a way of managing documents. That's another use of blockchain. A lot of banks are spending a fair amount of research dollars building capabilities in this area, learning, but also making some practical applications as this extends into the world of reality from the world of ideas about blockchain.
You kind of just gave an example there by saying, the documents and the banks investing, R&D money into building that. But what's an example of blockchain or a different example of blockchain?
Well, I like for the exchange of financial value, maybe you use Bitcoin to pay for something. So you owe someone $100, you send a fraction of a Bitcoin, your Bitcoin to them through, you pass that value on to them, so you exchange value. An example of blockchain might be a smart contract, which is a little different than the other document, but it's you write the terms of what's necessary, how is value going to be exchanged, and that smart contract has components when they're fulfilled. There's a transfer of value piece to it. It doesn't have to have a transfer of value piece, but let's say it has a transfer of value piece to it, so that when all the elements are completed, the transfer of value occurs with it, i.e. when the terms of the contract are fulfilled, the transfer of value happens and it's baked into the contract as opposed to separate and distinct.
That sounds kind of nice, I guess, if you're, doing a lot of transactions that, would have a trigger point for a payment or something like that. How can Treasury use blockchain?
I think one of the things that's been helpful since COVID happened, the use of right signature, DocuSign, some of these digital signing tools, I think is conditioning us to think in this way where agreements have to be executed and there might be 3 or 4 parties or different steps that have to take place, and it moves along and there's some type of digital signing codes and keys that pass these legal documents around. I think that's helping us to understand that concept in a much more rapid manner than may have otherwise been the case. But to your question, how can Treasury use blockchain? Banks, I mentioned, a number of them are investing, some very heavily, some consistently, looking at options here in a number of ways. BBVA did a almost $100 million loan and executed it using blockchain. So a real loan occurred using that technology. So certainly at least a proof of concept hit. Bank of New York Mellon, I like the story where they made their own digital currency. I think they called them some type of coins. They used them for employee rewards. So they use blockchain for passing on value, smaller amounts. A great way to prove a concept, get your employees involved in it, and for the bank to learn. So those are some of the methods that Treasury can use them. But we look at them for a lot of trade, particularly cross-border trade that requires different trust factors. Instead of having to rely on 2 or 3 banks in the mix, it might make it easier to do it without as much paper involvement and maybe not as many intermediaries.
So that wraps up all of the questions that I've pulled together for today. So what is blockchain? It's really a way of keeping track of records in a ledger that might add information to that ledger using those cryptographic codes or blocks. So all those blocks would then be linked by those cryptographics. Some of the uses is you can buy goods and services like we might see with cryptocurrencies, or I really like the business document distribution. So I think you mentioned that DocuSign or Right Signature are starting to condition us to think that way, where agreements might need to be signed by 2, 3, 4, even 5 parties. And so it's helping us to really understand that concept in the Treasury world. And we've seen banks start to heavily invest in that, and they're starting to do loans using the blockchain. So this is something that's real and coming, and it's already being applied. So that's a good way to wrap that up. And was there anything you wanted to add there?
No, I appreciate the time to talk about blockchain. I look forward to more conversations on this area of topics.
Yeah, thanks again for joining me today, Craig, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And make sure you join us back every first and third Thursday of the month for a new coffee break session. And as always, you can send us comments, questions, or topic suggestions at podcast@strategictreasurer.com. Thanks again, Craig.
Thank you.